Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in, Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you again for continuing to follow the show and support the show. For those that are watching the live feed on Facebook, we will continue to make the show available to as many people as we can. We do that, obviously, by running the live feed on Facebook. However, we'd love to have you download the podcast. That way you could follow the show, listen to it at your convenience. It's on education and information. We do some really unique, fun series. You know, the one we're doing, Starting Something in Silicon Valley with Jack Russo. I'll bring him in just a moment. And for more information, if you want to download the podcast, go to iTunes. Just type in Real Estate Radio Live, or you can go to our website, reradiolive.com. All right, let's get started. Mr. Jack Russo's back in the hot seat.
Right.
Good to have you back, Jack.
Thanks, Joe, for having me. I see you've got some copies of my book, Against Your Ledge, which makes me feel like I'm at home here now.
We want to make you at home, and we have this that you gave us,
too.
It's
beautiful. It's the whole story of Silicon Valley,
right.
a 100-year run.
Yeah.
Of course, it looks like the world ends in 2025.
Yeah,
there's like this
careful.
tidal wave that happens.
Right.
And someone was saying to me, there's a footnote, there's an article that was published last night in the FT that the Japanese economists have all said most Japanese are going to live over 100.
Wow.
And the goal now in Japan is health span over 100. And then I had a professor friend of mine look at the graphs that were published, and he said, well, the problem with this is they're not having enough births in Japan, so Japanese society will end by 2060.
Yeah.
And then the punchline said, what makes you think that Earth will even be here by 2060?
By 2060.
And he said, yeah, that's a problem. That could well be what happens before any of this stuff happens.
Well, it's an ongoing series here with Jack Russo. He's the managing partner with the Computer Law Group in Palo Alto. Try to have him on every week or so, depending on our schedule, and it's an ongoing series. We're talking about startups, and Jack has taken us through literally coming up with an idea to domain names, to hiring the right people, to raising money, and on. I mean, there's so many different topics. Today we're going to do patent litigation. Last week did we do copyright?
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking crises that businesses face and that entrepreneurs face, and we've actually done two on crisis management. One was what happens when you get a trademark trademark infringement, trade name infringement. The second is what happens when you have a copyright infringement. Now the third is what happens when you get charged with patent infringement, which can be literally a bet the company case, where if the plaintiff is correct, he or she or it may shut you down. Literally, the remedy that can be granted if the patent is valid and infringed and there's no way for you to design around, you may have to shut down your product line. And if that happens, it may close the company down. And some people remember there was a case like this involving the original BlackBerry network where there was an owner who charged patent infringement. And the judge said, look, if I find that there's infringement and that you guys have not designed around, you're going to have to shut down your service. There won't be emails anymore on BlackBerry. This was a famous case about 15 years ago.
Boy.
The world has changed a little bit since then, but still, there is a risk in patent litigation of significant liability and significant attorney's fees, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and how that kind of crisis is dealt with.
Very good. But before we jump into that, again, if you could remind our listeners and our viewers a little bit about your firm, what you guys specialize in.
Sure. So we're in downtown Palo Alto. We have an office in San Francisco too. We try to cover the entire Bay Area. It's Computer Law Group. It's in Palo Alto, California, www.computerlaw.com. You can reach me at jack@computerlaw.com. And we do the whole range of things that entrepreneurs and growth and really even public companies need, dealing with intellectual property litigation, intellectual property strategic planning, intellectual property licensing, and then everything that goes around that, which is typically in the area of helping an entrepreneur. Like I met with an entrepreneur this morning. He's got a great idea. It's in the real estate industry. I'm going to tell you more about it after the show. And he's like, look, what's the strategy for this? And how do I protect myself? And what about if I get sued? And all of those things. I said, well, you can listen to the show. And he said, no, I need to sit down with you for an hour or two and go through this. And I said, that's fine, and we'll do that.
Yeah.
But in general, it's really a relationship-based firm where we look to partner with clients for the long run. So we've had clients, literally, I've been practicing almost 40 years. The firm has been around for over 30. I was previously at a firm that started Apple Computers, but the net of it is I try to have a long-term relationship with clients so we help them throughout their lives. And in some cases, now we're helping their kids, and in one case, their grandkids.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
makes you feel old, by the way.
I came to you with my first idea in 1998, over almost 20 years ago.
That's right. And we see cases where now we're seeing succession and people passing businesses on to kids or to other relatives or to colleagues. I've got a case right now. It happens to be in North Carolina. It's a great business, and the father is going to pass it on to the son, and we're sitting down and helping that whole transition plan. So we do some of the business planning. I was lucky enough to get an MBA from UC Berkeley. I also have an MBA from Columbia Business School. It's a long story about that, but the net of it is moved from New York here, and now I'm very happily in Silicon Valley, although my wife every day says, gosh, it's getting so crowded and so congested.
Yeah, you're hearing that a lot, aren't you?
And people are like, what's going on? And then someone said to me, whoa, your house is worth seems like umpteen billions of dollars. And you say, gosh, if my dad were alive, my mom still is, knock on wood, you should say, man, sell and find some place that's cheaper to live and live off your savings. But, of course, we don't grow up in that culture here.
That's true.
The culture here is, man, what's the next challenge? This guy came in today. He might revolutionize things. You want to be part of that story.
I agree. Right.
That's irreplaceable in Silicon Valley.
Right. More than just a house.
More than just a house.
Right.
It's irreplaceable. It's not the way it was in the East Coast where people worked for 25, 30 years, and then they got their retirement and they lived happily ever after in Florida.
Right.
That's just not what people in Silicon Valley want to do.
That's right.
Right?
All right. So patent litigation. Where do you want to kind of summarize or get started on this?
Well, where I would start is, look, the world is changing. The first point I'll make is that more and more patents are issuing. There's no question about that. More and more filings are occurring. The backstory on that is the reason that's happening is there are a number of lawyers who are overseas that are harnessing overseas talent to create patents inexpensively. This is a big point. Years ago, when someone came in and said, I want to file a patent, it wasn't like, what's the price? How can you get it done for a project price? None of that existed. Today, there are so many lawyers that have harnessed PhDs in India, PhDs in Bangladesh, PhDs in Eastern Europe, smart people. And they get them to write the disclosures and do the hard work. They're doing all the detailed drawings. And then the lawyer comes in and says, I can write, 3 or 4 pages of claims. I can get that done in 4 or 5 hours. But I got the 50 to 100 hours of all the background work done by low-cost talent. See, people don't see that. That's the first point. More patents are being filed because they're getting done less expensively because the Internet has allowed greater delegation, right?
So yet another industry under pricing pressure.
Exactly. And if you talk to the patent lawyers, the guys who do patent prosecution all day long, they'll say, I can't meet that price. If you can get it done by folks in India or you can get it done by folks in Pakistan or any place throughout the world that has a lower cost of living. I mean, some of these places in Eastern Europe, the average wage is maybe $500 a month.
Right.
And yet
they live well.
They live well enough to do intellectual work. They're not slobs. I mean, they do work that's decent. It's not like, gosh, this is terrible work. It's passing muster in the patent office. The examiners are approving it. So that's step one. Step two is you've got more entrepreneurial approaches towards enforcing patents. So you'll see lawyers take cases with people that have collected large portfolios of patents and say, there's value here. The patent office said there's an invention here. It looks like there's an invention here. It looks like this company's infringing it. And you'll see more entrepreneurial action. So then the third point is because there are more patents and because there's more entrepreneurship with patents, there's more filings of litigation. That it's like going on 101. If you really drive up and down 101, every day of the week, you probably have to expect to get into an accident about every few years because there's too many cars.
Yeah. Right.
It's
the
like
odds.
You have to, the odds are against you. Someone's going to make a mistake. So the odds of not getting sued for patent infringement in today's world are so different than it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, and there is a counterforce at work that I'll talk about in a minute, but the three main points are producing, we have this wave that we have on the wall of how technology is growing, which it is. The patent filings are growing, which they are, and the litigation is increasing. And that, of course, has the judges pulling their hair out, whether male or female. They're all pulling their hair out saying, I don't have time for all this complexity. Yeah. So it's introducing other approaches for trying to resolve these cases, which we'll talk about. But the main point is there's a big wave, and when you start a startup that has any technology in it, particularly if it's something like an iPhone, of course Apple was going to get sued. Of course Samsung gets sued. Of course these big guys get sued. There's like 200,000 patents that are implicated by these devices. Right. There's so much going on. It's so much more than a simple Swiss Army knife. Yeah. It just about does everything. So, of course, there's multiple technologies that are going to be raised and, of course, multiple litigation. So any day of the week, if you type in Apple Computer and within so many words of litigation, there's going to be like 50 to 100 filings that come back that are being made. So Apple has to run a big legal department, as does Samsung and others, and they have to get used to this, as do the rest of the world.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back. For those that are watching on Facebook, stick with us. It's just a real quick break for the podcast. And we're going to come back and continue the conversation about patent litigation with Jack Russo. We'll be back.
For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
How would you like the opportunity to secure a record low interest rate while buying and or selling your home? In addition, how would you like to save 20% or more on your entire real estate transaction? Finally, how would you like to bundle all your real estate services in one location? Well, now you can achieve this with BundleSelect.com. That's right, save on real estate lending and title. With BundleSelect.com, technology and a personal concierge are at your service to save you time and money. BundleSelect's hand-picked team of experts will save you thousands of dollars by bundling real estate lending and title services. BundleSelect.com gives you all the control, including using your own realtor. I'm Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live, and I have been on the radio educating consumers for years. I'm here to tell you BundleSelect.com is the best way to save money on real estate. By bundling services, you could save tens of thousands of dollars. Visit BundleSelect.com.
The estimated minimum savings are based on a comparison with the national average. Individual results may vary, and the estimated savings are not guaranteed. Bundle Select Inc. is a licensed real estate broker. California Bureau of Real Estate Broker License Number 004666902.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's topic or guests, just visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome back in. Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Jack Russo in studio. Typically, we try to have him in the show once a week to do Starting Something in Silicon Valley. It's an ongoing series. Today we're talking about patent litigation. You know, some of the safeguards, some of the additional patents. You said they were increasing. One of the questions I had for you quickly as I listened to you is, are corporations and companies, Jack, also using the services overseas in India and all these other places, or is it primarily small companies and individuals?
I think you're starting to see even big companies, and the reason for it is they are trying to leverage the talent that they have in-house.
I see.
And, you know, IBM has always had operations in many overseas countries. Mm-hmm. And, of course, when you have operations, then you're going to end up attracting lawyers, and those lawyers will say, oh, I can do that work. So the initial mode was like IBM US would delegate to IBM India.
Right.
And then they say, well, wow, these guys are graduating from the equivalent of MIT in India is called IIT. For those listeners that are here from India, they know that's like a famous university, famous technology university. And those people are just as good as American talent, maybe better, they would argue. And they're very, very diligent. And so IBM and others have delegated. And here's the kicker, and it's really the trend number 4. large corporations are leveraging their own patent portfolios to squeeze royalties out of other defendants. I'll repeat that. Historically, large corporations stockpiled patents as kind of things of beauty, like a car collection. Never drove the car, just put it in the car lot. Say, look at my beautiful collection of patents. Sometimes you'd walk into, years ago, we represented IBM, and we walked into their offices.
All posted.
Oh, man, the whole wall. I mean, it was like thousands of patents along this long hallway wall, because there's an industry, when a patent issues, the plaque maker will send all sorts of solicitations, originally by postal mail, now by email, that say, hey, you just got a patent issued. We can make this nice plaque out of it, and your inventor can feel loved. And they do. Inventors do feel loved when they see that.
It's a lot of work.
It's work, and it's
pride. Yeah.
And so, of course, they sometimes give bonuses, so there's an incentive program behind it. But now IBM, and in fact the thing that raises this is IBM took to trial a case that everyone thought, they'll settle, they're just doing that to squeeze a few bucks. They actually tried this case in Delaware. It was IBM versus Groupon. Groupon is the Groupon company. It's a little tiny company. It went public. They did okay as a company. It's sort of trying to make its way through life and have some relevance. They'll send you an email and say, if you want a discount on your next sushi dinner, clip this coupon. It's really a marketing service for small companies that have no marketing. So they'll go around to storefronts literally and say, hey, do you want to get online? We'll get coupons out there. You'll get more business. So Groupon kind of built that business. IBM turned around and digged out some old patents they had from like 15 years ago. Remember, the life of a patent is long relative to the technology we're talking about. It runs for like almost 20 years. Well, 20 years from the date of filing, usually 17 years. There's a variation, but just think of it as over 15 years. That's a long time. I mean, if you look at this chart, lots of stuff is happening over 15-year periods. So IBM sues Groupon. I'm sure the Groupon people were like, what? IBM? They're not a troll. These companies that file suits that are viewed as non-producing companies, sometimes called NPEs, because they just have stockpiles of patents.
I see.
So IBM now is suing on something they don't do. IBM doesn't do a coupon program. IBM doesn't do it. They're not a competitor of Groupon, but they did it because they're squeezing value. And Texas Instruments started this trend maybe 2 decades ago by saying, look, we create lots of valuable intellectual property. We want to get paid royalties. In addition, if you're not going to buy our semiconductors from us, and you're making a semiconductor product, then you should pay us a royalty if you're infringing our patent. It's a way to create some profit margin. So, in effect, a profit center becomes the legal department. The IP department becomes, we got these patents. Does Groupon want to buy them for like $100 million? No. Well, they're infringing them. I'm just imagining this is the conversation. I don't know if it happened this way, but it goes like this. Will they buy them? If they'll buy them from us, we'll sell them, and that'll give them more things to protect their business. And Groupon says, we don't need those. Our business is just a service business. Leave us alone. So we're not going to leave you alone. So they filed suit in Delaware, and everyone thought, when we saw that case filed over a year ago, this will get settled. It went to trial, and everyone was betting that IBM, like big bad IBM, was going after a little Silicon Valley company because Groupon is here in Silicon Valley. And IBM wins.
Do they really?
They win that trial, and everyone is like falling off their chair saying, this is a case where Goliath wins. David loses. The little guy lost. And so I think the ruling that came in was like 50 or 60 million. The number was big.
What does a company like that do?
So company has to hope they have some insurance, which is the first thing you look at. If you get sued and, you're just looking at what do you do, the very first thing you pull out is, do you have any insurance policies that may theoretically cover? Because we had that conversation. Sometimes the coverage is at odds and you have to fight for it. Number 2 is, do you have any indemnification agreements from other technology providers that Groupon might have had to say, well, you built this technology for us. We're just a marketing company. You should cover this because your technology is what's infringing. So that would be the second course. And then the third course is you sit down, and maybe the first course is you sit down with a lawyer after you do that checklist set of items and say, what's my defense to this case going to be? And in today's world, and this is the counter movement that's happened as a result of this big wave of activities, the counter move that's happened is Now you can file what's called an IPR, which is a proceeding in the patent office to have the patent re-examined. The lawsuit gets put on hold.
Okay.
So all of those costs are suspended. Most of those costs are suspended. The patent review that's done through the IPR, if it's granted, will result in an independent judge or set of judges looking at what happens. And this whole IPR process was originally before the U.S. Supreme Court, recently before the U.S. Supreme Court, on was it constitutional that someone that owns a patent might lose the validity of the patent in a non-Article 3 judge that is not a district court judge, but essentially an administrative judge who's part of the patent office. And the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, it's constitutional. That's the way it should go. So the result is we have a system now where the litigation is really not totally in the federal district courts anymore. Part of it goes back to the patent office. Now, I'm oversimplifying a lot here, but conceptually think of it as when you're a plaintiff, you might have to go through two proceedings. One that's a redo in the patent office to make sure no prior art has failed to be reviewed to make sure the patent is in fact valid. And then the judge and jury get to it in the actual infringement case. So this results in a lot of expense, which means a lot of people think most of these cases settle. And in fact, most of them do, because competent lawyers look at what the risks are and then negotiate a risk-adjusted settlement. Now, in the case of IBM versus Groupon, I'm going to guess they must have been at least $5 or $10 million apart. Then they said, you know what, we're going to roll dice on this one, because if they set that precedent, that precedent has some force against other defendants. So IBM might be thinking, hey, if we get Groupon for $60 million, then maybe we get Yelp next. Then after Yelp, maybe we get Google. And then after Google, maybe we get Apple, because everyone's doing some form of this. Do you follow? Then it becomes a windfall. Then it becomes, hey, maybe we should buy some IBM stock. They're going to have more profit in this quarter from their patent licensing activities. So that's a big final point, which is when you look at this whole area, it has become a much bigger business for everyone involved, the patent lawyers, the litigation lawyers, the defense lawyers, the insurance people. The licensing lawyers are almost like a separate breed of lawyer that looks at a risk-adjusted way to try to stay out of litigation, because the key data point is the average defense cost for a patent case is $5 million. $5 million.
That's one reason to stay out of it.
I mean, think about that. You say to someone who's a small inventor who says,
how do they can't survive that,
they
right?
Can't, I mean, unless you're a big enough company, you pretty much, and a lot of judges are realizing this and saying, you know, the legal system, the federal legal system in patent litigation in particular, is priced only for the extremely wealthy. You cannot do a case for an individual or a small company unless it's an extremely creative financing approach. And by the way, and this might be the real final point, there's now a whole industry of parties that are providing financing for these fights.
Oh, interesting.
Like literally coming in and evaluating the value of the case. So let's say it was the other way around. Let's say it was Groupon before they went public, before they were a big company. When they were a little company, let's say they were suing IBM. Let's flip it around. But they didn't have the money to pursue it. They could go to outside financing, think of them as investment bankers, because they evaluate the case like it's an oil well that's going to produce. And Groupon said, as a private company, small company, I got this patent. I think this big guy's infringing. I can't afford to litigate it. Would you partner with me, and I'll give you a piece of the outcome? And then if I win this, I'll give you a piece of the outcome of the next case against Yelp and the next case against Google. So there's this whole game theory that's now playing out. So there's a lot of activity happening in this area, and it does generate a crisis for people that aren't ready for it.
It does. There's a lot of good information about it. So we have just a minute or so left. How would you wrap this up and put a nice little bow on it?
When you go into business, particularly if you expect it to grow into any size business, anticipate that you yourself will eventually want to take some of your real innovations and file patents on them, because sometimes the better approach for Groupon would have been to cross-license a portfolio that Groupon had with IBM. Now, that was probably irrelevant here because IBM's not in this business.
Right.
But you want to anticipate you're going to probably get into some fight with someone eventually as you get bigger and bigger.
Right.
I'm like shocked that Tesla hasn't run up against some of these car company patents. I mean, so far I haven't seen that Tesla has been named, but think about it. GM General Motors, had an electric car like 30 years ago. You know, they were one of the original innovators well before Elon Musk was probably even, you know, a teenager. So think about that for a minute, because somewhere in this,
someone's probably researching that.
Well, that's the question, right? Like, when you get big enough, Tesla's starting to get big enough. Look, they recently announced that it's going to take the company private, and something like a $76 billion private purchase, which everyone's saying, where's that money coming from?
He made the announcement on
like,
Twitter.
You know, I got this friend in Saudi Arabia. He's willing to write me a check, you know, like, not a problem. I can put my hand in the air. I've got so many billionaires as friends. Maybe that's what happens in those circles. But the point is, it's amazing to me that Ford, whose market value is less than Tesla. Ford, like the original Ford company, it's got millions of patents, tens of, not hundreds of thousands of employees, all these dealerships, a whole network, a brand. Its valuation's like 2/3 of that of Tesla. It sells 10 times as many cars. It's got 10 times as many factories, but it's like a tiny company compared to Tesla. They've got a huge number of patents. No one yet. Maybe they're just waiting.
Oh, it's not new, shiny, and exciting either, right?
That's it, right? I mean, it's like the iPhone.
Right.
The iPhone was not the original smartphone, but man, they put stuff together in one package, and the world loves them.
Yeah,
and now we've got a $1 trillion company.
All right, we're going to wrap up patent litigation. Jack, again, if someone wants to reach you, what's the best place for them to do that?
So Jack at computerlaw.com, as well as 650-327-9800. Happy to talk to people, happy to give them my best views of what to do, particularly if someone's been sued. I think you want to talk to 2 or 3 lawyers. I often say to people who call me, and I'm the first lawyer, say, look, here's 2 or 3 other people you can call. These are my views of what's going to happen, but you should definitely go out and talk to people and get comfortable, because you're going to be in a 2 or 3 or sometimes 5-year endurance race, and you just have to be ready for it and have the patience for it.
Very good. All right, we'll try to do it again next week.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
It's Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thanks again for checking in. For more information, you can go to RERadiolive.com, and be sure also go on to the services, legal services. Jackson, his company is listed in there as well. Until next time, take care. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.